Okay, hi guys. So we're going to continue our bedtime stories with the historical background of the holiday of Purim. Kids, you want to say hello?
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so today we're going to talk about King Koresh of Persia. King Koresh of Persia was the king before Achashverosh. His grandfather was King Astyages. One night, King Astyages has a dream. And he dreams that growing out of his daughter's stomach is a huge vineyard. And the vineyard, like leaves are growing all over and spreading all over his country. And he gets very agitated by the dream, but he decides maybe it's nothing. But lo and behold, he goes back to sleep and he has the dream again the next night. And this time he says, no, it's prophetic, it must have meaning. So he calls his advisors, he says, I keep dreaming that my daughter, Princess, her name was Mandes or something? Yeah, her name was Mandane. Sorry, her name was Mandane. That she has a vineyard growing out of her stomach and it's spreading all over my country. And his advisors tell him, well, that means that she's having a baby and this boy is going to take over your country and be even more powerful than you. And he gets mad. He says, what? My grandson is going to be even more powerful than me? And what do you mean she's having a baby? She's not even married. Well, he goes and he checks, and lo and behold, he finds out that she's gone and had a secret wedding with one of his officers from the army, somebody that he would not have approved that she should marry. And without telling anyone, the two of them went and got married, and now she was having a baby. And he gets very angry and he takes Princess Mandane and he throws her into jail. And when the baby is born, he takes the baby, he says, take the baby and throw him out in the jungles. Now, children, other sources will tell us the story a little differently. They'll say that he said the baby has to be killed, and the person needing to kill the baby had pity, had Rahmanos, and ended up giving the baby to some farmer who raised him. But the most accepted sources from a Jewish perspective is that actually King Koresh, as a baby, got thrown in the jungles. In fact, that's why he's called Koresh, because Koresh in ancient Farsi means dog. Because what happens is, when little baby Koresh gets thrown in the jungles, Hashem sends a big dog who comes and starts to feed him. She lets him drink milk from her, and she starts to keep him warm at night, and he grows up among a pack of dogs. And the older he gets, the more he realizes he's very different from these creatures, that he's not like them, you know. And he begins to meet bandits. You know, there were dogs, and he did grow up among the dogs. Good job, Kayla. But there were bandits who'd roam into the jungles, and every time they'd loot or fight or something, when they wanted to hide their treasures, they would hide it in the jungles. And he began to recognize them and come across them. And he says, hey, I look more like these creatures than like dogs. And from a young age, he joins these pack of bandits. And they always wonder, where did this child come from? How did a child land up in the jungles? Now, everybody knew that King Astyages had thrown his grandson to the jungle. And they all said, oh, this is the baby. He didn't die. He survived. And the older he gets, the more powerful he becomes. And he's ruthless, especially because he grew up in the jungles among wild dogs. And he joins the pack of bandits and eventually becomes their leader. Who hears about it? His grandfather, Astyages. And he says, what? My grandson's still alive? Leading a pack of bandits? Go send the army to kill him. And he sends a whole platoon into the jungles to come and kill Koresh. But of course, his soldiers were not familiar with the terrain. They didn't know about the jungles and which parts were safe and which parts were dangerous. And instead of them winning over Koresh, Koresh won over them. Now, it's also because Hashem obviously wanted Koresh to win. And Koresh ends up being a very good king for the Jews. But eventually Koresh wipes out every platoon that comes to kill him. And he storms into the palace where his grandfather was. And he kills his grandfather. He was very angry with his grandfather for throwing him to the jungles to be raised by animals, or at least to expect him to die, but he didn't. And also his grandfather had killed his father, his real father, the one who his mother had married secretly. His grandfather had killed him, so he was very angry about it. And he takes over the kingdom. He becomes a very powerful king, and his power grows in that he marries the daughter of the king of Madai. That's why we always hear about Parasu Madai, right? The Megillah tells us about the fact that they ruled Parasu Madai. The two countries ruled over the Jewish people, mostly Persia, but those two kingdoms, because it actually merged together because Koresh married the princess of Madai. And when old King Dariavesh died, Dariavesh the first died, the whole kingdom came under Koresh's rule. And King Koresh loved the Jewish people very much. First, he loved them because the night when he stormed the palace of the king of Bavel, Belshazzar, it was Daniel who predicted that he'll win. Daniel, the prophet of the Jewish people, with the famous handwriting on the wall. We shared the story, right, kids, before, right? The one where that writing was on the wall. And King Belshazzar went in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. You remember that story?
Yeah.
All right, okay. So King Koresh loved the Jewish people. He said, wow, Daniel the prophet is on who prophesied that I and the king of Madai will win over Bavel. And we did just like he said we would. So that was one reason. Another reason why he loved the Jewish people also. Remember that King Koresh wasn't like other kings. He didn't grow up in the palace. He didn't grow up rich and powerful. He grew up struggling for a loaf of bread out in the jungles. And he took a lot of pity on people who were oppressed. And he saw the Jewish people as an oppressed people. He said, one minute, they were thrown out of their homeland, the land of Israel, their palace, so to speak. And he decides he wants to help them. He befriends them. Actually, a number of Jews come to strong, powerful position during Koresh's rule. And they come and they ask him, they petition him. They say, King Koresh, please, we want to go back to the land of Israel and build the holy Bet HaMikdash. Yirmiyahu Hanavi prophesied that Bavel will rule for 70 years, and after 70 years we'll go back and rebuild the Bet HaMikdash. Well, the first part of the prophecy came true. Bavel fell after 70 years, but we've still not gone back to build the second Bet HaMikdash. Now, children, everyone was confused about Yirmiyahu's prophecy. They didn't understand that the 3 times he spoke about 70 years were actually 3 sets of 70 years. It wasn't one set of 70 years. There'd be 70 years that they would rule, Bavel would rule over them. 70 years till they'd start to build the Bet HaMikdash, I want to say, but I might be mixing it up. And the last 70 years when they'd actually go back and build it completely. So Koresh has pity on the Jewish people, and he said, sure, not only will I send you back, I am going to give you gold and silver. I'm going to return some of the kelim of the Bet HaMikdash that King Nebuchadnezzar stole from you, that actually came into my possession now. Not all of it, because King Nebuchadnezzar sunk it. I think he split up the treasure into 4 ships. 1 ship he kept himself, and 3 ships he sunk. So, which is a very important part of the story, because who finds one of those ships? Who knows? Right? That's how he becomes so strong and powerful. But we'll get to that story later. King Koresh says, I have some of the vessels of the Bet HaMikdash. I'll send it back, together with craftsmen, together with construction people who know how to build very well, and architects. And some Jews do go back, kids, but the vast majority of Jews stay in Persia because they say, we're going to go back to Israel. It's been about 40 years that we're out of the land of Israel. There are no houses there. We don't have any way of making a living. And here we have our homes, our businesses. So all in all, we're told a small amount went back. Maybe 400 people, if that. I think it might have even been less. But they come to the land of Israel and they're so excited to start building the Bet HaMikdash, and they start to lay the foundation together with Koresh's assistants, with all his money and all his workers. And suddenly, who becomes very angry? Other people living in Jerusalem, the people in Yerushalayim, who were the Karaites. The Karaites were a group of people who claimed that they're the real Jews. They would keep only Torah Bichtav, only the written Torah. So if they read in the Torah, do not make a light on Shabbat, no fire, they'd sit the whole Shabbat in darkness. Even though Torah Shebaal Peh teaches us, you can have light, but light it before Shabbat, you know, or like today, we put it on a timer or something. But they were very offended by the Jews who claimed to be the real Jews. And throughout history, the Karaites caused the Jewish people a lot of trouble. And they didn't like this. They said, what's this? The Jews are coming back, building the Bet HaMikdash? We don't want the Bet HaMikdash. They're going to claim to be the real Jews. And they start to complain. Not only that, but the ministers in the land of Israel, the ruling like mayor or what have you, like kind of the dignitaries in government, like the governor, thank you darling, the governor of the land of Israel, and in particular Jerusalem, was none other than Haman's son. Anyone remember his name? With a Shin it starts. Shimshi, it's okay. Shimshi is heard about later in the Megillah. I believe it was Shimshi that's heard about when he inscribes in the book about how Mordechai saved the life. Very different story. We're not getting to that. And Shimshi, along with some of his brothers, all sons of Haman, held very powerful positions in Israel. Haman had placed them there. Haman had built his way up to power. Even though Haman originally was only a barber, he was only he used to be the barber of the king of Kartzin for 22 years, I believe. But they're very powerful, and they don't like that the Jews are coming and building the Bet HaMikdash. So they send a complaint back to Persia, to King Koresh, and they say to him, the Jews are planning a rebellion. They want to throw you out of office. They don't want you as king. They want to rule over the land of Israel themselves. Look how hard it was for the king Nebuchadnezzar to destroy the first Bet HaMikdash. He spent years and he spent so many resources and so many soldiers, and finally he destroyed it. But it stood for 410 years and it kept the Jewish people very strong. You're going to let them build it again? They're going to rebel against you. And poor King Koresh was confused. He didn't know who to believe. So he said, okay, I am going to send an investigation team to go and check. But before he was even able to finish finding out exactly what's happening in the land of Israel, children, he died. And you see, Haman already hated the Jews from back then. He hated them, him and his sons hated them, obviously, because he was the descendant of Agag. And he knew he's a descendant of Agag, who was supposed to be killed by King Shaul. In the end, doesn't get killed before he marries that maidservant. And she has a baby, and from Agag eventually comes Haman. But he was an Amaleki. And the other reason we know is a story everybody knows, but it's important to understand the details of the story, is that Mordechai wouldn't give him any water when they were in the desert unless he became his slave. Now, it's really important that we learn the details so we don't think that Chas v'Chalila Mordechai didn't agree to share some water with a dying man. The story presented in the Yalkut Me'am Lo'ez, if I'm not mistaken, that's where the source is. explains it to us in far better detail. And there it tells us how Haman and Mordechai were both generals in the army, and I believe the king was King Koresh. It could have been King Karzin. I'm not sure which one. But they were high up ranking generals. Each one had a whole platoon of soldiers whom they had been sent with their soldiers on command of the king to besiege a certain country and conquer it. And he told them it's going to take you about a year. You have to surround that kingdom. Regretfully, I don't know which kingdom it is, but probably somewhere, Syria, one of those countries. I don't know which one. He said it's going to take time, but surround it, and I'm giving you enough supplies for a whole year. I'm giving you a whole chest of gold, so you should be able to feed your soldiers for an entire year. And Mordechai went to the north, and he besieged the city from the north, and Haman went to the south. He besieged from the south. Now, Mordechai was very, very careful. He split his money into 12 little baggies or whatever, and was very careful to share it out. He knew he needs it for an entire year. He's not going to waste it. Haman, on the other hand, was reckless. And he says, whoa, I have all this money. Amazing. Oh, party time. And he starts to buy all kinds of fine ropes for himself and all kinds of delicacies. And he throws one party after another for all these important people in the government, because remember that Haman really tried to buy his way into power. He was originally just a barber. And after 6 months, Haman finds that he is out of funds. What's he going to do? A whole platoon, I think they each had 600 soldiers, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 1,000, I don't know how many. And how's he going to feed them for 6 months without money? And he can't go back to the king and tell him, I spent it all. I wasted it. He's going to chop off his head. So the only person he could think of who had that kind of sum of money, who was an ally, who had the same interest as him, was Mordechai. And so he travels to the north. He circumvents the city, goes to the north, and he tells Mordechai, you have to help me. I've run out of supplies. We're both in the same army. We want to win this war. You're not going to win alone with only your soldiers from the north. You need my soldiers from the south. Give me money so I can feed them. And he says, what do you mean? Mordechai tells him, the king gave us more than enough money enough money for a year. Only 6 months have passed. I shared it. I allotted it separately. I'm like, divided it, so I should have enough for the entire year. And Haman says, well, I don't know. I made a mistake. I miscalculated. I don't have. And my soldiers are all going to die, and they're certainly not going to be able to help you fight the war. And so Mordechai tells them, okay, I will give you half of my money, what's left for the next 6 months, and we're all going to have to survive on less food. I'm not just putting myself out, it's the entire army base, but we're going to share it with your people on condition that you become my slave. Now, the reason Mordechai did that was because he could see with Ruach HaKodesh, firstly, that Haman is going to try and hurt the Jewish people and destroy them. And he felt that by him being his master, he's going to be in a better position to be able to save the Jewish people. We see in the end that Haman, it still didn't help. But, of course, in the end, Hashem is the one who helped us. But Mordechai did whatever he could to try and keep Haman at bay. And the truth was that he was right for what he did. Haman was such a spendthrift. He wasted all the money. And so Mordechai now becomes Haman's master. But with that, Haman hates Mordechai and the Jewish people. And that's one of the reasons also that his sons prevent the Jewish people from continuing the building of the Bet HaMikdash. Now this threw the Jewish people again into confusion, because they knew Yirmiyahu said after 70 years they're going to go back and you build the Bet HaMikdash. And now they started, and the foundation was set and nothing was happening. After that, Koresh said, no more, you can't continue, I have to set an investigation. But in the middle of it all, Koresh gets killed, and he doesn't have an heir, and we're going to find out that Achashverosh takes over. According to some opinions, Achashverosh was in fact Koresh's son, but according to most opinions held by the Torah, Achashverosh was not his son in the least. But what was he? Anybody remember?
He was a horse stable boy.
Right, he was a horse stable boy.